Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I'm your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning and hello, deplorables, drags, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, weirdos, maggots, and of course those dog-faced pony soldiers.
All right. Well, weather-wise, nice.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like it shifts very rapidly. I have a question though, just on general things. I just felt that the summer went by really kind of quickly, and I'm only judging it by daylight. Okay. I just it seems that it wasn't that long ago I'd walk out of the gym at 6:15 or so, and as I drive home, I'd have the sun in my eyes. I walk out of the gym at 6:15 and it's still dark.
Yeah, it really has. This time of year, you're losing about three and a half minutes a day, and it's coming off both ends. And like I was saying this morning, I was up real early this morning too, and it was dark. It does seem like summer flew by, and
Yeah.
like everyone I've said that to said yes, it did fly by. I thought it had to do with like I coached basketball too late into the summer, right? I try to stop at a certain time and enjoy the rest of the summer. And this year, like we were doing basketball, we were doing big time tournaments almost till August, and then we had a couple of things we did in August. So there really wasn't a big break away from basketball. So. And now we're back at it for another 10 months or 11 months or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. So my wife doesn't, she does. I don't like it either necessarily, but I mean, I can live with it. So she doesn't, she really hates the heat and humidity, and she tries to go on a morning walk. So the hot, humid days, just hard. These days they've been nice and cool, but she walks out of the house this morning and she's like, "It's too cold for me," and she rummages around for a jacket and then she goes out. It's like that's not like her normally to do that. I mean, when if it's too cold for my wife, who always kind of runs hot, it's like it must be cold. I mean, I'm walking out of the house. I haven't gone to the jacket yet, but I keep thinking like I'm getting closer and closer to having, because I'm at the gym at 5 o'clock, right? So I'm getting
Right.
closer and closer to having to probably put on a jacket at some point because it's going to get below the point where I'm going to be anywhere comfortable. I'm just going to be going like,
Yeah. It's kind of, it's, I mean, and the demarcation was really clear. Like when it hit September, it stopped being hot and started being cold, right? I mean, we're here
yeah,
on
no,
what,
I mean, that was the other thing to me. It's just like, it's almost as if as soon as the page turned on the calendar, the weather just automatically just changed.
yeah.
We'd kind of had that last blast in August of some hot, humid weather, and then September hits, and it's like, whoa, I don't know.
Yeah. It's like middle of fall. Let's go,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the weather tracker, and I have to go back and read up and see how this compares. But so, my memory is always only going to be anything just, what I'm experiencing now. And I'm just like, wow, I don't recall such an abrupt change as August ends, September begins. It's like, boom,
Yeah.
I'm used to maybe a little Indian summer, get a little, you still have some warm weather, that sits around for a couple of weeks before it starts getting cool on a regular basis. But this one just went bam.
Yeah. It's
Like
I've been out at night a few times here lately. And it's pretty cool. By the like the end of these games and whatnot, you need a jacket.
yeah. All right. So I got to throw one more thing in here before we get onto the news. So my wife likes to make occasionally she likes to make beignets for our missionaries, and she's become pretty good at it. And it's a really intensive procedure with all the dough making and frying and everything like
A hot
that.
mess, literally a hot.
It is hot. I mean, it's the kitchen gets hot, you get hot.
Yeah.
You've got everything going on, and so we were trying to explain this to our young missionaries the last couple of days as to what this is. A lot of them have never seen a beignet before. They look at this thing and they think it's a scone, and we like. No, it's not a scone. This is what happens when you grow up in Utah. Okay, you think everything that's breaded is scone. Okay,
Yeah.
And so I thought, I need to look back on this. I did make this comment that was I said it was like a French donut, and one of the people goes, she goes, she's from France. She's never heard of this before. And I'm like, okay. So I went to Wikipedia, and I mean it kind of, I guess it emanated in France, but I guess Louisiana is where it really became kind of a big thing, right?
It's a Louisiana thing. It's a New Orleans thing.
Yeah.
It goes with
And
the chicory coffee.
yeah. The chicory coffee and the beignets at Cafe Du Monde. That's what I'm told. I've had the beignets at Cafe Du Monde before. But the other thing is that several of these young missionaries would say, "Oh yeah, it's from Princess and the Frog," and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And so I got around this morning to going through Princess and the Frog, and I'm trying to fast forward. I'm trying to find the part of it in there, and sure enough, the star. I mean, it's all animated, but she actually had made beignets at this big party, and I'm like, wow, okay. And when I looked on the web, you can actually have from, I don't know, Mama's Delicious Kitchen or something like that. It's like Tiana, which was the character from the Princess and the Frog, Tiana's beignet recipe. So you can actually get the recipe that supposedly was used, that she would have used had she been a real person, I guess, in there. And so I'm like, okay, this thing is really big. So anyway, my wife made about 200 of those darn things in the last 2 days.
Any left?
Yeah, there were a few left. She had a handful left, gave them to one of our missionaries. So this is the other thing, okay? So you talk about beignets and coffee. So this missionary, who is of Tongan descent but grew up in Texas, and will probably be on the University of Oklahoma or Oklahoma. I can't remember. He's going to be on a D1 roster come next year. He said, he told my wife, he says that he likes to eat them with his ramen. And, all the way home, my wife is like, what is all that about?
Ramen with beignet. I have not heard that one.
Yeah. We're thinking about making some ramen and getting a picture of ourselves with some beignets, some leftover beignets, and then taking a picture and then sending it to him. Says, is this what you meant?
Yeah. Yikes.
It seems like two very opposite flavors or something. I don't know. Anyway, my hat's off. Beignets are great. And I didn't realize until I was looking at it, that is the official donut of Louisiana.
That's correct.
So
even though we have some great donuts, it's a great donut state.
Yeah. So anyway,
better than almost every state.
I would kind of force myself. So this way, the next time she decides to serve it, whenever it'll be, I can say, this is the official donut of Louisiana, and here's some history.
There you go.
Because those kids who had never experienced it before, they'd come back. We had some, there was enough for some seconds. They'd come back and they go, this is really good.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Plus, because it's kind of, it's fried. It helps. It's a little more filling too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. That's enough of all that frivolity or whatever. We've got lots of things to talk about today. Israel news. I do want to get your opinion about this thing because it just seems to be, it's puzzling to me in so many fronts. So Israel has, they tried to rescue these hostages. Hamas killed the hostages just beforehand within, 48 to 72 hours, I think is what they said the autopsy shot them. And so Israel wound up with 6 dead bodies, including one Israeli American, the Hirsch Goldberg, Poland, I think it was his name. And so this was after about 330 days since they were taken hostage. Hamas, I think originally, they were just talking about, this is what happens when you don't, want to have an agreement and everything like this. But then they kind of reverse course a little bit. This to me underscores what Hamas is. They are not interested in the solution. We have hit this thing time and time again that they don't want peace, and they are willing to kill innocent people, and as long as they've still got a few hostages aside, captured there and they were alive, they will keep killing them. They were not about to turn over, any more hostages that were alive. That is not their goal. And yet we have these massive, massive protests in Israel about, oh, we have to have peace. We got to do something about this. And I'm like, are you are these Israeli citizens that are out there? Are they playing into Hamas's hands? By trying to put pressure on Netanyahu, who was pretty defiant, I think, in pushing back and trying to make clear, you know, what is going on there and what would happen, if they make concessions to Hamas, that there is a huge disconnect here of some sort, right?
Yeah,
Wrong?
it's very important right now that Israel is led by someone who understands what's actually going on, right? Because it would be easy to buckle, and there have been some protests, and the International Criminal Court found them liable and whatnot. But the thing about it is, Hamas attacked Israel. Hamas continues to attack Israel. That is both a past tense and present tense situation. They do not want peace. They do not want a two-state solution. They want Israel driven from the river to the sea. They want them driven into the sea. They want them all dead and all out of the way. Okay, so what's the peace deal that you make with somebody like that, right? Because they're not really even all that interested in the land that you occupy. They're interested in you being out of the way. So if you're not willing to be out of the way and this is your home, what do they want Netanyahu to do, right? The Hamas has turned down the last 5 ceasefire offers or whatever deals, right? They're going to keep rejecting them, and they're going to keep blaming Netanyahu, and a certain amount of the left is going to keep falling for it. So, I think, God bless him, but he's got to keep marching on. And I think, if he can hang out till we have an election here and we get a Trump into office, then they will prevail, and they will have the world at least out of their way so they can do what they need to do.
On this river to the sea thing, I mean, we've heard this over and over and over again. What are these protesters? What do these young people actually think that means?
Yeah, I mean, they see it as like a freedom slogan. It's a slogan. It doesn't have the meaning of the literal meaning of the words, but to the people involved, that's precisely what they're trying to get. That is precisely the meaning they're looking for. They want the Israelis, they want the Jews out of the way, dead, destroyed, whatever, out of the way. And you don't get to kick those people out of their homes. You don't get to do it.
Yeah, I think you're right on that too. Is that it's become a popularized slogan, and they really don't understand what the real meaning of it is. They just think, oh, well, this brings us peace. This gives us the two-state solution. We will never have another problem, anymore going forward. And it's like, do you know exactly who Hamas is? Have you actually been watching how things have been going? Have you watched the interviews with the hostages that have been able to be recaptured, by Israeli forces, be interviewed about the conditions they lived in, the tunnel systems, all of the things, all the degradation and deprivation that they faced during their time in captivity. It's like it just goes right over their head, because they're so caught up with these left-wing messages that say, we have got to have this peace, and it's all about peace. But Hamas isn't about peace. If Hamas was about peace, they never would have attacked, on October 7th to begin with. This was a bold attack, and they took all these people hostage. That is not about peace. People who want peace do not go in and kill and capture innocent civilians and then hold them for what has been 335 days. And some have come home alive. A lot of them come home dead. It is an unfortunate situation as to what has been going on there. And Netanyahu's doing all he can. I feel the pressure that they are put on him is like, I just wish I could shout out and say, you guys are just idiots. You don't understand what's going on here. I mean, maybe not all of Netanyahu's policies are what we would all agree on, but you've got to stand firm on this. He gives an
Right.
inch to these guys. It's that whole thing. You give an inch, they're going to take a mile, right? And they will.
And they
Hamas.
don't. They're not interested in peace. They're not interested in two state solution. There's no negotiating with them. There's nothing to negotiate, right? They won't agree to quit shooting for very long. If they do agree to it, they will violate it because their goal has not been accomplished. Their goal is to wipe the Jews out of Israel. As long as the Jews are still in Israel, they're still working on their problem, right? So you have to treat them as people who are never going to stop. Okay, so what do you do when you have somebody who's never going to stop, right? And I think that's what Israel's doing, which is you make it where it's hard to stay alive if you don't stop.
Okay, so the other thing too I want to ask about is this, that we had the Department of Justice, unsealed this indictment they had against 6 Hamas leaders. 3 of them are dead now, apparently, I guess. But that they've charged them in the deaths, on October 7th. So this happened back in February. We're just learning about it now that they've unsealed it. I guess, but I'm not sure what the effectiveness of this was going to be anyway. I mean, they couldn't really do anything unless they somehow got these people to the U.S. I don't see how that was ever really going to happen to begin with.
They use indictments to make political statements, right? They've always kind of done this. It's like, okay, we're back on being pro-Israel, therefore we're indicting a bunch of dead Hamas guys, right? I guess you heard they've indicted. They're going after a company called Tencent Media. And they're saying that they were taking their directions from the Russians, and the Russians were giving them money and directing that their people, like Benny Johnson. Are you aware of who he is? He's like a blogger.
Benny interned with us.
Okay, so Benny. And there's 2 or 3 others that are with them that are. They're saying, they were delivering Russian propaganda, and they say unwittingly, right? Taylor Hansen, whose thing seems to be, he exposes the drag shows and he focuses on the pedo pervert aspect of Democrats. Those were Russian messages that they were being paid to introduce into the American political discussion, right? That's what they're not charged. The company is charged. And it's unclear, other than disagreeing with the Biden administration, what they did wrong, right? It looks like they are prosecuting, opinions they don't like. Could be wrong, could be more to it than that, but that's what it looks like now.
Yeah, I mean, at least with the Israel, with this whole Hamas thing, the unsealing of this indictment, coming here with the last 60 days of the campaign seems to be very political, right?
Right.
So the Biden administration has been tough from day one, or at least early on. They finally figured out, and they said, we're going after we're indicting these people. Not necessarily that we'll be able to do anything with them because you've got to get them to the U.S. to actually punish them. But we were there. We planted that flag as such, and now that we're less than 2 months into the rest of the election, we're going to let everybody know, this is what we've done.
It's like you remember during the Mueller probe, they indicted these so-called Russian troll farms, right? And they were trolling our elections or whatever, and so there was 13 of them, I think, that they indicted. And so they have the hearing, their arraignment or whatever. And one of them showed up and said, we're here. We plead not guilty. And we want to see all the evidence. And that was the end of that, right? Because they didn't have any evidence. So nothing ever happened to those charges, right? Because that was a completely corrupt prosecution from the get-go. And they never had what they said they were going to have. So, it looks like the DOJ is playing games. It looks like Garland is doing what he can do to try to keep his job in the next administration should Harris manage to win. I don't think that's going to happen, but it does look like that. It's basically political pandering during campaign season.
Yeah, and you're mentioning too that the whole Russia thing too. I mean, yeah, I mean, I have personal interaction or have had personal interaction with Benny when he was just finishing college and he came to intern with us and really didn't. He's quite a character, I'll say that. I'm not, and I'll only admit that we did this, but I don't actually try to go after and say I knew Benny before he became famous because he's got a checkered history about honesty along the way. There's some dubious things that he's done, and even when he was with us, he did a few. I let him go and let him do a lot of interviews and videos and stuff like that. And there were some things there where I'm like, no, we're not going to put that up on our YouTube channel. Okay. That doesn't fit with what we had. But he did do a really, he did do some good ones, over time, and everything like that. And just, which was nice. I mean, and I'm glad that he's having success, but when I saw that he was part of this thing, I thought, why does this not surprise me? I'm not commenting on, I wasn't saying like, I thought it was true, but it's like, if everybody was going to be, put into this, pool of people they were going to accuse. Yeah, Benny was going to be in that some way, somehow.
There's a guy named Poole that's involved in it.
Tim Poole is the other guy who I don't know. I mean, I think you're more well versed on some of this. I mean, I basically don't watch anything that Benny does, and I don't know who these other guys are. And I think there was this tie to something called the Harlan Daily or something like that, which is like, and that's one of the ways that they set this thing up. There's like, I have no idea what this is. I'm obviously not spending enough time on the internet to see what all this propaganda is.
That's probably not it. You're spending plenty of time on the internet.
I'm actually trying to see things that are from legitimate news sources when I can, or at least look at what the liberal media is doing to see what's going on there, so I know what the heck they're doing. But I'm not really interested in a lot of other places I've never heard before. I mean, if it pops up, I'm on YouTube a little bit more now.
You know what? The thing about it is, though, it's moving that way. Right. I mean, I don't trust CBS to tell me the truth any more than Benny or Taylor Hansen or any of those guys. And why should we? They've been caught dead to rights and brazen lies. Right. All the networks have at this point. One of Trump's strategies on his campaign is he's doing these podcasts, right? With, I guess he did one with Lex Friedman last day or so, well-known podcasters that have millions of followers, listeners, whatever you do to a podcast. And, because he's being painted as this, madman, crazy idiot, right? And so he sits down and talks to these people whose job is to sit around and talk to people all day. And, he sounds normal and he gives answers that in some cases are quite surprising, right? He's thought about some issues, and like he talked to the one guy about addiction, and, Trump's put a lot of, I mean, it cost him the life of his brother, as it did me. Right. And so you start thinking about like, what was that? What could we have done as people, in that person's life to have prevented this, to have gotten them, so you do a lot of thinking about like, who was I in this person's life? What could have been done? There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. So, there's a dimension that like, not the typical candidate, you would never get it out of them. Right. And his opponent happens to be, even farther, even more inaccessible to the press. Like she makes a point of not talking to any press that she doesn't have to, right? And if she does, it's very fleeting and she can escape away and she's never like nailed down, right? You're really nailing Jello to a wall there. So it's becoming a viable, I mean, we'll see how viable, I guess it is in 60 days or whatever, campaign strategy on the part of Trump to go around, legacy media, right? Which is, I think the MRC counted it up the other day, and like 87% of the coverage of her was favorable, 92% of the coverage of him was unfavorable. She got like 6 times as much coverage, right, and so forth. I mean, the media makes a point of favoring her in every way they plausibly can. The whole tone of the Dana Bash questions, right, of people on their side and our side. You can, our guys are trying to catch them in a lie and nail them to the wall, right? Their guys, it's like, how do you feel about your mom? Right? It's those kind of softball questions and no follow up and all this, and their plan now is to try to slide her in there past any media scrutiny at all. Right. And, meanwhile, you have a candidate who is using these bloggers and these untraditional media sources to give access that no candidate has ever given before. So it's interesting juxtaposition. We say we're for transparency, but we're about to find out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is interesting to see, how Trump has gone beyond traditional media. I mean, I find myself, basically now, kind of looking at some of the CBS, ABC, NBC, whatever they're putting off on streaming. Since I don't have cable, I just watch their streaming news, Fox as well. And then I'll also look at, what is Megyn Kelly saying about some of this. Sky News, they've got a few people on there that are just brutal on the Democrats. It's just, it's funny. And they point things out that are just like, yeah, I don't remember seeing any of this on CBS, ABC, or NBC. So I'm still kind of got that media hat on where I'm like, what am I seeing from these other people that I'm not seeing there? Trump, by going to these things, and I think, talking about addiction or anything else, when Trump starts to humanize these things on himself, that's a different kind of Donald Trump. That is a kind of Donald Trump that, we also need to have and hear a little bit of, because, as you're talking about all the negative coverage of Trump, this is a positive thing, rather than just being kind of labeled as the bully and the guy who's just throwing epithets or whatever at Harris. There is this other side, and yeah, having lost a brother to addiction, he has something he can talk about. I mean, he could take that as far as he wants in terms of, we want to, in our administration, this time around, we're really going to work hard on treatment programs, getting people help, that they need, and trying to find something that closes the gap, because we're still losing too many people to addiction. This is a tragedy in America, and we've got to find a way to do this to help these people get off this stuff. And I mean, we see, we've seen for decades Hollywood stars and things like that. The big blow up, in the media with Matthew Perry and his ketamine thing and the ketamine queen and all this kind of stuff. It's like, these things never should have happened. I mean, this stuff should have happened in my mind, but it's out there, and we've got to find a way to try to cut these pipelines off. I don't know the answer to it, but it's just a terrible, terrible thing when people have these addictions, whether or not it's drugs or alcohol or whatever, things that just drive them, and drive them to an early grave. It's just such an unfortunate situation. Well, I want to stay international just for a little bit, and then we're going to go to the Harris Walz interview, which you've just briefly touched on. Ukraine, they got attacked by some missiles from Russia. Had some damage in there. Zelensky's calling for some more missile defense from the West. I hope he gets it. I don't know if he'll get it exactly. This still I think there's still a lot of tension with how much, aid people, countries are willing to give him, because this has been such a long slog. But, Ukraine, we've talked about it last few weeks. Ukraine made some incursions into Russia and kind of, put Russia off kilter a little bit. Russia's now trying to fight back, but this is still this kind of just tit for tat little thing now. And, Putin will keep throwing people at this as long as he can, and he's got the bigger population, so
Yeah.
he can outlast them just if he keeps throwing people at the situation.
Right. This is like New York and New England going, all ganging up on Vermont. I mean, it's just Vermont can hold them off for a while, make it difficult, but Vermont's not going to win, right?
Yeah.
We know that, so that's part of what's going on. Part of what's going on, the Russians, like you say, they're back into doing damage deep in Russia. I mean, deep in Ukraine, they've sort of been given another license to go in and even the score, reset the situation, and so forth. So that's part of what's going on. They knocked down a lot of power in the middle of the country, with what they've done and so forth. Doing with drones and aircraft. So Ukraine doesn't have control of its airspace anymore for whatever reason. So you got to come up with Iron Dome or some equivalent pretty quick, because that's you don't have control of the airspace. That's about all you can do.
Oh, I know what I wanted to ask too, because when you brought up when we'd had that little discussion here about the whole Russia interference thing, is that what would be the benefit of Russia wanting to see Donald Trump elected?
Right. See, that's I think I ask people that all the time. It's like, Putin took Crimea under zero. He took Georgia under W. He took Ukraine under Joe. He didn't make a move under Trump. But why is it? Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, I mean, there is, the argument they make, in fact, is that most of the aid, what we call sending aid to Ukraine, is buying equipment, military equipment from American manufacturers and sending it to Ukraine. All right. So we're actually spending the money, that we're spending on Ukraine in our own country. Right. It's it's given to American workers to make American products to ship overseas. So that's one of the arguments in favor of it. So, Biden probably is getting some kind of kickback. And of course, I guess more has come out in the last week or so about, his family's involvement with Burisma and with people all over the world getting kickbacks and so forth. And I guess Junior's trial starts today, right? Hunter's trial.
I think so, yeah.
Starts today in California. So there'll be a lot more of this to come out then.
I wonder, I know it's made the news, but I kind of wonder how much attention will be paid to Hunter's trial. I mean, with his dad out of the race, is that as big a deal as it would have been? I mean, this, Hunter definitely was a drag on his father for a certainty. I mean, Joe had many reasons, or that there's many failings of Joe Biden, but this was also going to be another albatross around his neck, was the fact that Hunter couldn't escape this trial. So we have that. Plus, also it's like, if once Joe Biden is out of office, if you're a believer in kind of the Biden crime family kind of narrative, is that what happens next? Do they still, are they operational? Are they just going to be able to operate more under the radar? I don't know. I'm not a big, I'm not big into that type of thing, but Biden still has connections. I guess as long as he's lucid. I don't know.
I don't know. Here's the thing about it. And this is why, like, the whole thing about him dropping out of the race is interesting and so forth. Like, they're supporting a lifestyle for a bunch of people, a bunch of their family, right? That they don't make enough money to support, not close to enough money to support. And they've done it by selling influence abroad. When Joe's out of office, he's not going to have any more influence to sell, right? No one's going to answer his calls. No one's going to consider his kid, a smart international negotiator of anything, right? That kid got everything he got because his last name was Biden. And now that the name Biden doesn't mean anything, he's out of work. Like, his skill is dried up. He's like a horseshoe, guy now. He shoes, you can shoe horses. That's about all, right? He's put out of his business.
You're really talking about putting him out to pasture.
But even, I mean, I'm talking about Hunter, putting Hunter out the pasture because he is not. Yeah, he has said he won't pardon Hunter, and he won't commute sentence. So I don't believe that, but he has said that, and I don't think the other thing that lost is like Hunter had the power over his dad to say, oh yeah, you don't pardon me. If I have to go see the inside of a jail, I'm going to tell a lot of stories on the way, right? Well, now no one cares about his stories, right? So what? Here's impeachable conduct against Joe, right? No one's going to do anything about that now. The House has already said, here's all our findings. We're not going to act on it, right? So he won't be impeached. We know they've traced $30 million to his account, and he won't face any consequences. So, I guess they may let Hunter swing. Now, the only danger to them is things that implicate other Democrats, right? The influence that was sold, the people who were ordered to carry out the will of the administration and so forth over this. Some of them may have something to say. So it could be nasty, but it doesn't, like, you're right that it doesn't have a whole lot to do with Harris. I think she can say pretty credibly that, whatever Hunter did not involve me. And I don't think it's going to, it sort of puts a little distance between her and Joe. But, I think Joe gets that she would need to distance herself.
So, here's a couple of last thoughts about the potential income stream post-Biden presidency. One is that Joe Biden, probably he'll have to just rely on whatever the government pension is, for all his public service and whatever investment income they have. I mean, I guess Dr. Jill could write a book or whatever, my journey with.
I mean, if you're 82 years old, you may not need 4 houses.
Yeah.
You'll be able to get down to like a house or two.
Right. And I think we ought to watch exactly how their lifestyle changes once he leaves office. But maybe Dr. Jill writes a book about her journey with dementia or something, like as a caregiver or something like that.
Yeah.
But a lot of these former presidents, a lot of them in the past have made good money on the speaking circuit. You can't put Joe on the speaking circuit.
That's right.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work unless you're going to put him up for like a 3-minute speech where he can read 3 lines or 4 lines off a prompter, and then that's it, because he's gone. I mean,
he needs to retire.
Watching him on the campaign trail with Kamala has been excruciatingly painful.
Yeah.
It's I don't understand what he's doing. And for Hunter, I'm thinking like, he still has an potential income stream, and that's his paintings. I'll give you $10 for that painting. He ain't gonna get $100,000 for it.
Yeah, that's another one that's it dries up. He's about to learn some harsh lessons about how much of it was his name and how much of it was him. When I went to the Hill, there was people working in my office who'd been. Like one lady, her husband had been prosecuted as part of the Abramoff scandal, right? And so my boss called me in the first day. He said, I want you to remember something. Donald Rumsfeld once said that anytime you get invited to something in Washington, they're not inviting you. They're inviting the person in your position. So when you go, you remember, you're not Brian, you're their favorite guy. You're the guy who occupies that chair, and they're trying to influence the person in that chair, right? So, like, I'll never forget, who Mike Allen is, who runs Axios?
Yeah.
Like the second day I was there, Mike Allen comes streaming into my office, right? I've been looking forward to meeting you and all this stuff, I mean, just total, like, snow job, right? And you could see it, but this is a guy, he reports on Capitol Hill, and he needs to, like, make good impressions on all the committee press secretaries, right? I mean, that's his job, is to kiss up to those people. And suddenly I'm like, wow, I'm one of those people, right? That's what the boss was talking about yesterday, right? That's exactly what he meant. I got that treatment because, I was of the position that I held, not who I am, because this guy, he acted like he knew me and wanted to meet me and had heard all this stuff about me. All he knew about me was I was in a job of a person that he needs to needs to do his job, right? He needs to know to be able to do his job. So, I mean, you got to be able to spot what people's intentions are. And, and you should start from the assumption that nobody likes you, right? And no one likes you in Washington at all. We all hate each other to the bone. Our party, the other party, everything is self-interest. Every once in a while, you'll find out that that's not true, that something happened that was not the result of someone's self-interest, right? But it's a rare thing, right? It's like it's easy to not prepare for that and just ride it when it happens than to not prepare for the other, because that's your daily life, right?
Okay, so that reminds me of,
sorry to be so cynical, but
yeah, no, but that reminds me of an experience I had at the Washington Post shareholder meeting, right? So I went to a few with my father, but one year, I think it was around 1985, and I had owned my own shares. I bought my own shares in my retirement account or whatever, and so I went ahead and my father gave me a question to ask, so I stood up, as a second question person. And so after the shareholders meeting over, my father and I are in the back of the room. So these meetings were always held at Washington Post headquarters on 15th Street. And they had all the paraphernalia, the stockholder reports, and they owned a lot of different companies and blah, 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 just information on all the companies they own. And several of the board members they were in the front on the dais, and they came streaming back to the back of the room. And they're like, it was like the legal counsel and one or two other guys was like, "Oh, I'm so-and-so. I am so happy to meet you, to COCCQ, to following in your father's footsteps." And I'm like, "No, you're not." I was like, I was still pretty young back then, but I'm still thinking no, it's because I'm Rita Irvine's son at this point in time. And they're trying to get a gauge as to what's going on there, because my father had been a thorn in their side at every shareholders meeting as far as I can recall. And they're trying to figure out, will I do the same going forward, when it's my turn?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but it's funny. It was just one of those funny experiences. Well, maybe we'll see Hunter Biden, maybe for 10 cents a day or something like that. The if he goes to jail or prison or whatever, that they'll say, "Hey, can you teach the other inmates how to paint?" And you can charge them 10 cents a day. And
turn out painters.
We'll give you some painting supplies. Who knows? It'll
got me a skill in stir, honey.
I don't know. So anyway, all right. And then lastly, before we move on to the Harris thing, is just this, where the U.S. seized the Nicolas Maduro's plane that was in the Dominican Republic, and I guess it had been bought through some shell company, and so they determined that had been done illegally, so they've seized that plane. Maduro, I mean, here we are. It's been over a month since the election. All sources have made it clear that Maduro lost his election. He's still there, and he's trying to, I guess he's called for the arrest of his opponent. And now, to top it off, he says Christmas is going to begin on October 1?
Yeah. Needed to move it up for some reason. Was it trying to help the economy or something?
How much more crazy, clownish stuff can we see in Venezuela?
Well, my question is what does it take to get him out of there?
Yeah.
I mean, how many elections does he have to obviously lose before he can't be president anymore? See, that's the thing is we let these things, I don't know if you saw this, but it was a 2019 clip of Harris when she was running then, right? And she was talking about Twitter. And she said, they've lost their privilege, right? They had the privilege and they didn't take care of it. And they're not keeping an eye on the stuff that goes on there, inflammatory things. And, we pull them, we get rid of them. They're, they don't have and it's first of all, the First Amendment, it's not a privilege, right? These are rights that we were endowed with by our Creator. They don't come from you. They don't come from your government. Therefore, you and your government have no power to take them away, right? It's like, and this is somebody running for president who has no understanding of the concept that I just laid out, right? That that the rights don't come from the government, right? The rights come from beyond the government. They cannot be abrogated by the government. We cannot be alienated from them, right? That's what our Constitution says, right? And she's like, well, Twitter, they put stuff on there I don't like, so they lose the privilege, right? She called it a privilege. So these are the people we're running against. These are the people that are on the other side of the political aisle, and this is how they think, right? So, people coming out and saying, hey, he lost the election, he needs to go, and then being persecuted for that, for expressing that view, they're comfortable with that. They think that's part of the process. They think that's legit. So, you're dealing with, half the country that does not care about the Constitution, does not care about individual rights or individual dignity at all, right? And, you have a candidate who, so they don't care that, like, she doesn't talk to the press, she doesn't explain herself, she doesn't, you don't know what she thinks or why, because, they don't consider Americans to have the right to know.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the longer he stays in there, it's like, so then why even bother having an election at all? That's a
Exactly.
complete far. Right.
Right.
Look
So
at
what do
others.
we do? What does the United States do? How do we
Yeah.
get him out?
Yeah. This is a
You
good
know,
question. All right, so on to the Harris Walz interview. This may be one of the last things we go on and hear in depth. Several things that I wrote down here about to comment on. She mentioned turning the page, except exactly
right.
who's been, which party's been in power more in the last 10 years. I think it's starts with D. Bidenomics, when she was asked about Bidenomics, talked about capping insulin, didn't really address the inflation problem at all and what
And first of
happened.
all, we there needs to be a fact check, right? And this shows you like the lack of integrity of the media. Trump capped insulin at $35 a month.
Right.
Okay. They undid that so that they could do it again and take credit for it. So for 3 years, you had to pay more for insulin just so he could take credit for it. Right. And so now they're, oh, look at this wonderful thing you do. No, you undid it when it was previously done. Right. People suffered for 3 years so you could make a political point. Right. So that we should never again cede 1 inch of ground on the insulin business, right? We should call them out every single time they say that and point out that it's a lie. She also claims, I'm looking at your list now, on fracking, said I'd already changed my position. No, she had not. What she had changed was, what she had said was when Biden was running for president, she was asked about it. And she said, Joe Biden will not end fracking, right? She didn't say, I'm for not ending fracking. She said, Joe Biden will not end fracking. And he had decided, for the same reason that it looks like she has decided that you can't ban fracking, right? That it's not smart and that you won't win Pennsylvania, right? And there's a lot of little things that go to it, so they can't be for that. So now she is claiming, that she was always for fracking. Well, no, she wasn't always for fracking. She said so during one of the debates in 2020 it was 2019 because she was out of the race by 2020. Yes, I will outlaw fracking on the first day of office. So her values have changed, and they've changed in all kinds of ways, and they tend to be changing, to Trump-like positions in many cases because those positions are more electable.
Yeah, the thing about the values thing is just like, how do you say that with a straight face when if you're confronted with all this other stuff and you're saying like, but we already have you on tape of saying this, and
Yeah.
now you're saying this. It's like, that's a change. Why do you say that they haven't changed? Or is there some other kind of weird, definition of what values is or whatever? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Yeah. And it's like I was saying, I mean, the thing is that Trump had 4 years, we're 3.5 plus years into the Biden presidency, and we'd had 8 years of Obama before that. A lot of the policies that are out there in place were put in by Democrats. So who are we turning the page from? And if you're in a Democrat administration, who are you turning the page from? I mean, it's like you are the vice president. Are you turning the page from your president? Is that what you're trying to say? Are you trying to run away from the president and yet not run away from the president? She does kind of go back and forth, right? She's picking
Right.
off some positions, right?
Right. And she can't say anything too anti-Biden, right? Because you can't have him react poorly, right? She really needs him to stay positive, right? And just, he doesn't have to love it, but he's got to at least pretend to like it. Okay. So that's part of her thing. She, until that interview, and I'm not even, we didn't really get a lot of straight answers out of that interview. Like all these policy changes, they were announced in press releases released by unsigned staffers, right? So, I don't know. I'm just saying that, do you really mean this stuff? Or are you just putting stuff out? And, it all seems to be everything that you put out. You're changing your mind on fracking, on immigration, on insulin, all these things. And you seem to be moving, to doing things like Trump had them. Why don't we just elect Trump, right? Where is that question? Why don't, instead we get, the guy yesterday asking Corinne Jean-Pierre about her accents or whatever. Did you see this?
Yeah, well, that's funny though. I mean, because if you actually watch if you watch the tape, you just see how she has adjusted her accent.
Yeah, she's a complete fraud, right? And then, but this guy asked a question that she can laugh, and the press secretary can laugh in his face and move on. One thing is like the press has to be able to put somebody in there in that room who is opposite enough of the administration to ask questions to get these kind of answers, right? To get actual, an actual adversarial question. And we have this clown from Fox who never gets it right. I guess he has the job because his dad works there or whatever, and so, it's a forfeited opportunity because the guy's completely inept.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem is that Fox has got the wrong person in the White House correspondent role in that position. They've had better people doing that in the past.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's horrible. He doesn't know what to ask. He can't ask a follow-up question, and he asks questions that they can give him a throw-off answer and move on.
Yeah,
he does not know how to do this game at all.
Yeah, he hasn't learned how to do that at all. Yeah, I mean, there's nepotism. Anybody? Well, okay.
Yeah,
we can talk about that. So a couple more things here too. Then she talked about the Green New Deal and where we were involved in deadlines around time.
Yeah,
like
Lori looked at me.
That was
what other kind of deadlines are there? Exactly.
Deadlines aren't about time. I don't quite get that.
Deadlines around time. You also, that answer that when it went with my thing. Like when she doesn't know what she's talking about, she does this.
Yeah.
Right. And then she launches into the deadlines around time. Right. I'm winging it.
Yeah.
Here it comes.
I have no idea what I'm talking about, but here.
Yeah. But here it comes. And so that's what she does. And then I also think that, I think the most telling thing about that interview is Bash's tone, right? She wanted to be able to get excited that she's presenting the candidate. She's performing the interview that tells America that Kamala Harris is fit, worthwhile to be president, right? You're seeing by the end of that interview that she knows she doesn't have that, right? The whole tone of the questions are, can I ask you a question so simple that you won't screw it up? I mean, just like her, just watch her evolve during the interview from really excited about her purported place in history to, we got to get this over with without it being a disaster, right? It was horrible. You know, and they come out, of course, their trolls come out. It was so awesome, man. She crushed it. Everything was crushed. You know how you know that she didn't crush it? You haven't heard anything about a second interview.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go out and do 5 more of these.
This is also why she has. It's been what 46 days roughly since Biden stepped back from this whole thing, and she hasn't had a presser of any kind. And there was that report. I don't know if you saw that thing where she plugs her headphones in. She's walking on the tarmac. She walks up, and there's a shot of her showing. Yeah, she's holding the phone up to her ear, but she's got headphones on. It's like, yeah.
Like, there's no way I can talk to you. Right, I got so much on me, man, that there's no way I'll even hear your question.
Fake can you be? Oh my gosh. And this one last thing, and then I'll just mention briefly the poll, and then we'll close it out. So then there was Tim Walz, who talked about, he got asked a question and about the weapons and war and stuff like that, and he said, well, his wife, he says it was bad grammar. Okay, it's like, look, I think there are a lot of excuses you can use, but bad grammar is this is one of the worst.
Right. This has nothing to do with grammar. Everybody fits misspellings. Oh, it's bad grammar. No, it's bad spelling. There's difference. Grammar is a certain thing, right? It's not a whole bunch of things. It's just one thing. And that ain't it. What he's talking about ain't it.
Yeah.
Speaking of grammar.
Yeah. Yeah, really. Exactly. I love how you threw that in there. And then I just want to say, so the polls seem to be shifting back towards Trump. We're seeing some move back towards there. Right. So I'm watching Polymarket because I found Polymarket to be kind of fascinating. We were before the convention and all that stuff, Trump was doing well, and then it shifted where became Trump was like 1 point ahead. Now Trump's back up 53-46, and other polls and I'm watching Real Clear Politics just list the polls, and I'm seeing movement going back, swinging a little more momentum or whatever you want to call it, back to Trump on this. So that's happening, and we're seeing others. I think CNN and MSNBC also reporting that Kamala's got some potential problems on the electoral map if she's not careful about that.
Pennsylvania and Michigan in particular.
Yeah, and then so there's a lot of things there. I mean, she's out there stumping and whatever, but I'm not sure how much it's working there, for her at this point. Trump's doing his thing, and he's got the base, and I think they're making more progress. It's we've got a debate coming up, and the Harris people have agreed to the rules, but they're unhappy with the fact that the mics are going to be turned off. But they've been reassured if there's off mic banter that ABC would probably turn them on and help give it context or whatever. But I don't know.
They think Trump. Their whole strategy is to make Trump mad and get him so mad that he does something stupid. But no one's ever been able to do that, right? Trump, he laughs at that, right? You try to make him mad, he makes a joke out of what you say, right? So you don't trip him up like that. They get mad at him, and they think it's just as easy to make him that mad at them. And it's not, Trump doesn't care about their nonsense. So, I think that's a bad strategy for them. It does seem like, the ABC made her knuckle under to the terms that had already been agreed to. They were talking so tough at first. We're going to do this. We're not going to do that. I guess Trump took advantage of them backing out of the Fox debate to do a town hall last night. So he got the whole floor to himself, and he had, Sean Hannity asking him questions, which is, pretty easy. Pretty good, going to be favorable questions. And I think that, I think the Polymarket is right. You're starting to see the polls come back toward Trump, and there's no more bumps. There's no more conventions. There's no more things that she can rely on to turn it around. They either have to create a scandal or somehow pull out a, Buster Douglas punch in the debate, or it's going to slide away from him, and he's going to win.
All right. If you can close it in 25 seconds, I'll give you time.
25 seconds. Liz Cheney endorsing Harris is good for Trump. Joey Chestnut needs to grow up, man. He's going to get hurt doing that stuff. He's 41. You can do that when you're 21, but At some point. And you know what? As you know, I'm a Cowboys fan, but I think that it's going to be a good season for the Commanders. I think that they have a good coach in place. I think they have a plan, and I think that they got lucky and got a good quarterback finally.
All right, go Redskins. All right, thank you everyone for joining us today. Hope you stay safe and well as always. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And God bless America. And we will see you next week, a day after the debate, I think.
That's right.